Something unusual is stirring in the world of modern ministry, a quiet shift that could change everything. When Grammy-winning worship leader Tasha Cobbs Leonard stepped onto the same stage as Tuwe and Sarah Jakes Roberts, it wasn't just another collaboration, it was a moment that made the entire faith community stop and watch. Whispers started spreading. Was this unity, strategy, or something far more calculated? Behind the smiles and shared sermons lies a power dynamic no one saw coming. And insiders say this partnership could reshape the future of women's ministry forever. Stay tuned, because what? Future of women's ministry forever. Stay tuned, because what's really happening behind the scenes might not be what it seems. Is Tasha Cobbs Leonard joining forces to strengthen the Woman Evolve empire, or quietly transforming it into something brand new? Because what's unfolding behind the curtain could completely redefine the future of women's ministry. Faith and influence have never been this connected. In today's world, one sermon, one collaboration, or even a single post can spark global conversation in seconds. And right now, the name echoing across timelines and pulpits isn't just Sarah Jakes Roberts, it's Tasha Cobbs Leonard. For years, Sarah Roberts. It's Tasha Cobbs Leonard. For years, Sarah and Tora Roberts built a spiritual movement unlike any other. Woman Evolve became more than an event, it became a lifeline for millions of women discovering strength through faith. But recently, quiet conversations online have hinted that something deeper is shifting. Tasha's growing involvement isn't just another guest appearance, it's starting to look like a turning point. Is she here to elevate the vision, or is she planting the seeds of something entirely her own? People want answers. Why now? Why her? And most importantly, what does this partnership really mean for the legacy of Woman Evolve? Or, as some are daring to whisper, Woman Devolve. Is this the dawn of evolution or the start of something entirely different? In this video, we're peeling back the layers to uncover the truth behind the headlines, the collaborations, and the quiet moves happening behind the spotlight. Because beneath the hashtags, stage lights, and Sunday smiles lies a deeper story, one of power, purpose, and transformation still in motion. Stay tuned, because what's unfolding between Tasha Cobbs Leonard and Tora and Sarah Jakes Roberts might just change the entire landscape of women's ministry. Are their visions aligning or silently colliding? To truly understand the ripple effect Tasha's connection is creating, we need to step back and look at her remarkable journey over the past decade. Because Tasha's story isn't just about songs, it's about influence, timing, and divine evolution. When she burst onto the gospel scene with Break Every Chain, it wasn't just a hit, it was a movement, a spiritual anthem that shook sanctuaries and stirred souls around the world. That moment didn't just introduce her voice, it announced her purpose. And now, that same purpose may be setting the stage for a transformation no one saw coming. Many people are unaware, however, that a lady who fought silent fights was the driving force behind the triumph. Depression, insecurity, and the burden of social expectations. Tasha did the exact opposite. In contrast to many artists who distance their platform from their suffering by candidly discussing her experience with mental health and the value of emotional healing in religious communities, she called attention to her difficulties. She became a respected spiritual leader in her own right as a result of her openness, which also helped her connect with audiences. She was no longer only a singer. She spoke for strength, authenticity, and wholeness. Then there was a change. As time went on, her ministry expanded much beyond gospel music. Her focus on spiritual and emotional well-being, her work as a pastor with her husband Kenneth Leonard, and her partnerships with mainstream musicians started to attract a wider range of people. The gospel industry didn't initially meet Tasha Cobbs Leonard like this. This woman was creating her own movement. Her paths started to intersect more clearly with Tay and Sarah Jakes Roberts at this point, when her influence was growing to new heights. Was it a coincidence, or was something more significant developing in the background? Because around that time, Tasha's message began to focus more on identity, leadership, and empowerment, the same fundamental ideas that drive the struggle for women's evolution. Her public remarks, partnerships, and appearances began to more closely reflect that brand, and that's where the intriguing part began. Some began to raise the difficult questions, while others regarded it as a logical progression. Strong religious women banding together for a common goal. Was this partnership a calculated move or a result of divine alignment? Was Tasha entering the arena of women's evolution to encourage it, or was she emerging as a fresh, unique voice in an already crowded field left by Sarah Jakes Roberts? Because it's difficult to overlook the parallels between Sarah's distinctive writing style and Tasha's most recent communications. If you listen carefully, both place a strong emphasis on self-discovery, healing, and vulnerability. Both have mastered the skill of transforming personal suffering into public empowerment, and they both employ transparency and narrative as ministry tools. However, tension is inevitable when two powerful movements start to overlap, particularly in the same area. We must examine what Tasha Cobbs Leonard is entering in order to comprehend why her presence among the Roberts family has generated so much discussion. The Mystery Woman Evolve is more than that. It's a movement that changed the way religious women interact, speak, and take charge. Women Evolve, interact, speak, and take charge. Women Evolve started off as a message based on Sarah Jakes Roberts' personal experience. Sarah, the daughter of Bishop T.D. Jakes, was accustomed to being watched by the public. She had to deal with early parenthood, legacy pressure, and the kind of criticism that can either refine or destroy a person. But rather than escaping that background, she used it as a springboard. She began addressing women who felt misunderstood, ignored, or shattered. She was one of many women attempting to reconstruct their lives while maintaining their religious beliefs. Her message was straightforward but groundbreaking. Your evolution is evidence of your mission. You are not your history. Woman Evolve took off like wildfire after that. It evolved into yearly conferences, packed arenas, sold-out tours, podcasts, best-selling books, and networks of mentors. By fusing social media expertise, biblical knowledge, and unadulterated authenticity, Sarah Jakes Roberts had produced something that felt both spiritual and contemporary, and she became a powerful couple with her husband, Pastor T. Roberts. By her side, he's well known for his leadership at One Church, Ella and Potter's House, Denver. Together, they created what some have dubbed a faith empire based on relatability, relevance, and innovation. But as women evolved, expanded, things started to shift. A mystery that focused on women's interchange started to grow into a brand that combined celebrity, empowerment, and lifestyle. The distinction between cultural influence and spiritual development began to become hazy. Influence followed that expansion, and eyes followed influence. Critics, influencers, and the gospel community started to follow Sarah and Tuwe everywhere they went. Every new person they brought into their circle generated conversation, particularly if they had a sizable fan base of their own. And when Tasha Cobbs Leonard started to appear more regularly, that's precisely what happened. Although there was no big reveal of Tasha's affiliation with Woman Evolve, the public took notice. She started going to events, participating in discussions, and matching the tone of the movement with her own vocabulary of empowerment. Posts from both sides abruptly echoed similar themes: ending cycles, getting together, developing a cause. It seemed like miraculous timing to fans. Women uniting to support each other's missions, two forces of faith. For others, however, it sparked a mild but developing worry. Is Women Evolve growing too quickly and too far? And was this partnership with Tasha a strategic brand alignment or a spiritual one? Recall that Tasha and her husband run a successful church and ministry. A platform is not necessary for her. She's got one already. Therefore, when a well-known leader enters a different leadership field, it raises concerns over identity, direction, and motivation. It was perceived by some as a blending of anointed callings. Others started muttering about a covert contest for space rather than souls, because at the heart of it all is a question that many people are reluctant to ask aloud. Does spiritual growth still play a role in women's evolution? Or has it shifted to creating a brand that controls every aspect of contemporary Christian influence? And that's where the tale becomes deeper, because power transfers occur when movements start to expand beyond their initial goals. Furthermore, those changes might already be taking place behind closed doors. According to several people with knowledge of the matter, the mystery of Tor and Sarah Jakes Roberts has grown significantly outside of the pulpit in recent years. Weekly sermons and religious gatherings gave way to a full-fledged brand that now encompasses media, entertainment, fashion, and even music. They have perfected what many refer to as the modern church movement, which redefines ministry for a digital generation by fusing spirituality with social influence. Nowadays, Sarah Jakes Roberts, spirituality with social influence. Nowadays, Sarah Jakes Roberts frequently appears in discussions with influential cultural personalities. Her superpower is her ability to connect with both the religious and the secular, from Oprah-level celebrities to musicians who aren't typically found in traditional church settings. She was particularly appealing to a generation that valued authenticity over tradition because of this. In the meantime, the West Coast leadership of Tour Roberts has forged connections between the religious community and Hollywood. His church in Los Angeles has long been recognized as a place of spiritual solace for entrepreneurs, artists, and creatives. Solace for entrepreneurs, artists, and creatives looking for direction free from the condemning tone of traditional religion. The Roberts collectively have emerged as the model for a new form of religious influence, one that inhabits the red carpet as well as the sanctuary. This is when the intriguing part of Tasha Cobbs Leonard's entry begins. Despite having a strong foundation in gospel music, Tasha has also been balancing ministry and mainstream. She has worked with secular musicians including Nicki Minaj and Tiara, which has generated both praise and criticism. For her admirers, the partnerships demonstrated bravery and a readiness to introduce faith into areas that don't often discuss it. They were seen by her detractors as obfuscating the holy boundary of gospel purity. It's therefore not overlooked when someone like Tasha, who is well-respected, gifted, and not afraid to defy convention, begins to appear in the Roberts sphere. Both sides of the church community begin to speak. Actually, if you follow the timeline, you'll notice that Tasha's increasing focus on empowerment, honesty, and emotional healing is exactly in line with Woman Evolve's message. Sarah and Tasha started conducting similar panel conversations and online debates about women's identity, inner healing, and ministry leadership around the same time. Their words began to reverberate among themselves. Recurring themes included phrases like walking in purpose, reclaiming your power, and becoming your full self. Now, this was a lovely occasion for a lot of admirers. It seemed like a gathering of strong religious women who could support one another. Others in the Christian community, however, saw it as a different sign, an amalgamation of brands that may focus more on image than message. This is why that is important. Alignment has power in the ministry, intentional or not. It conveys the idea that these movements are spiritually connected. When someone like Tasha Cobbs Leonard links with Two-Way and Sarah Jakes Roberts, at that point, theological, purpose, and directional issues begin to surface. Do they have the same gospel to preach? Are they guiding individuals toward the same fundamental realities? Or have both ministries changed their message to one that is more lifestyle-driven, inspirational, and meant for a wide audience? Concerns about this new wave of Christian influence, led by people like Sarah, Two-Way, and now Tasha, shifting away from biblical teaching and toward personal branding, have been raised by several theologians and pastors. Sound bites are replacing sermons. Worship is starting to sell. This raises the question of where marketing starts and ministry ends. This is not to imply that they don't have good intentions. Actually, people who know the Roberts and Tasha well frequently say that they are extremely devoted to their work. However, when influence expands to this extent, even the most noble intentions can spark conflict. Tasha's participation in Women Evolve adjacent spaces represents something far more significant than teamwork. It's an indication of a change in gospel culture. We are seeing the convergence of digital ministry, empowerment speaking, and worship music into a single, interwoven movement. The strain begins to manifest at that point, because some women feel left behind and cut off from the straightforward, scripture-centered messages that once characterized these places, while many feel noticed, motivated, and strengthened by this new kind of ministry. Consequently, some online critics have started using the term Woman Devolve to suggest that what began as a heavenly movement of spiritual progress may now be changing into something less sacred, more performative, and self-centered. This isn't necessarily a knock on Sarah or Tasha personally. Is that fair though? Is it simply a misinterpretation of the ways in which faith is changing in the modern world? The internet reacts in two ways whenever prominent religious and cultural people meet together: suspicion and celebration. And when Tasha Cobbs Leonard started showing up in places connected to Tay and Sarah Jake Roberts, that's precisely what happened. That's precisely what happened. Some saw it as divine timing, a long overdue partnership of strong religious women. Others, however, saw it as the beginning of a subtle shift that might completely alter the tone of contemporary ministry. Let's begin with the festivities. Social media was inundated with supporters who referred to it as a kingdom connection. They commended Tasha's capacity to speak life into women from all walks of life, her humility, and her gift for worship. Numerous admirers of Woman Evolve expressed their opinion that she was the ideal addition, capable of adding spiritual depth to an already vibrant brand. Timelines were dominated by comments such as, "This is the collaboration we needed," and "The unity of these women is what the church should look like." It made sense on the surface. Women evolved as a global sisterhood, a place where women could grow, find friendship, and let go of shame. Thanks to Sarah Jakes Roberts. That message was ideally complemented by Tasha Cobbs Leonard's reputation as a worship leader who pastors from vulnerability. The intersection of the two realms appeared to be a clear victory for women's empowerment in religious settings. However, the opposing side of the discussion wasn't particularly nice. Critics started pointing out that the language of Scripture was beginning to give way to the language of empowerment. They questioned whether initiatives such as Woman Evolve were moving the emphasis from change centered on God to affirmation centered on oneself. The idea that what was once profoundly spiritual had become overly commercialized and personality-driven led to the trending phrase, "Woman Devolve" on church social media. Many seasoned gospel fans were also uncomfortable. They had seen Leonard, played by Tasha Cobb, transform from a worship leader whose songs brought tears to altars to a global influencer who performed at upscale events and sponsored conferences. While some claimed it wasn't Tasha's change, others countered that women change and asked, has the pursuit of influence overshadowed the simplicity of worship? Has she traded the intimacy of ministry for the spotlight of collaboration? They asserted that the ministry of Sarah and Tori had already begun to combine theology and motivational speaking, distilling scripture into catchphrases for social media. The change felt even more dramatic when Tasha, a worship artist with a strong spiritual connection, was added to that ecology. Videos that contrasted Tasha's more recent appearances with her previous sermons started to circulate. Some claimed that her tone had changed from being raw to more polished and brand-friendly. Some even asserted that women's evolution had started to shape not just their language, but also their public persona. Perception is strong, even though none of this has been verified. Furthermore, perception frequently turns into reality in the era of social media. In contrast, Tasha's supporters reacted quickly. They reminded detractors that for faith to remain relevant, it must change. They brought the fact that Jesus himself interacted with people from different cultural backgrounds. They maintained that Sarah and Tuwe were accomplishing just that by reaching a generation that the Orthodox Church frequently ignores through contemporary platforms, language, and aesthetics. Nevertheless, an unsaid tension persisted even in such encouraging environments. Since cooperation between strong leaders frequently results in the creation of a new hierarchy, even though unity sounds lovely, one that has the potential to inadvertently transfer power and influence. According to some insiders, Tasha's expanding prominence could redefine how Woman Evolve portrays its worship identity in addition to being supportive. Some thought that she might even be establishing herself as the movement's musical spokesperson, providing Woman Evolve with a kind of worship-based grounding it had not had before. And that's where the complexity arises. It would be a revolutionary collaboration if Tasha Cobbs Leonard were to take over as Woman Evolve's worship voice, but it would also redefine who owns the message and the listener. It might bring fans from different genres, generations, and denominations together, or it might lead to a covert conflict between devotees who regard Woman Evolve as Sarah's own ministry and others who think it's developing into something bigger, possibly even outside of her control. Then there's the motive issue. Is empowerment and unity the true goals of this partnership? Or is it a calculated partnership intended to unite crowds, increase power, and take control of the religious entertainment market? Because, let's face it, influence is equal to money in the media environment of today. Conferences sell out more quickly, books reach bestseller rankings, and music streams soar. Therefore, it's hard to avoid wondering whether spiritual alignment is being driven by marketing strategy or divine purpose when prominent ministries merge. Despite all of the talk, Tasha and Sarah have mostly kept quiet about the rumors. There was a silent alignment demonstrated by mutual support, common appearances, and consistent messaging. No formal announcement or public comments. Because people will formal announcement or public comments. Because people will fabricate their own stories in the absence of clarity, that silence is what keeps the discourse going. And that's precisely what's taking place at the moment. The public is attempting to determine if this new relationship signifies a subtle move towards something far more commercial or the next chapter of faith-based empowerment. But we must examine what comes next if we are to fully understand where this is all going. The question isn't just what Tasha, Sarah, and Tori are doing together as they continue to influence this generation's spiritual landscape. It's how their collaboration has the potential to completely reshape the future of women's ministry.